I saw the Confederate flag flying just 2 streets away from me. I remember driving down the street and looking at the man who proudly flew it on his lawn. Up high in the air, flying not from a covered porch, but from a flagpole he had erected on his property. One that reached up and up toward the sky. So proud was he of his flag. This flag that represents hatred and oppression. This flag that states, Black lives do not matter, as it reminds us of our ugly American history. And as our eyes locked, I thought, if he thinks so low of Black lives, surely he will not hesitate to think low of mine. His icy stare back at me confirmed for me that my life did not matter to him as well. I have not driven down that street since then, but I haven't forgotten that flag, nor that man. This last General Assembly focused on 3 topics. The first was about making connections with other faith communities as part of a deeper connections in interfaith work. There were various leaders from other faiths that would join our Unitarian Universalist Association President, Peter Morales, on the stage and speak from their faith tradition as to why they were called to work with us for justice. President Morales was joined by presidents of the United Church of Christ, the Union for Reform Judaism, and the Islamic Circle of North America. The overall message was that we need to do more connecting across faiths within our respective communities. And we would hear time and time again that we are better together. And another important topic that was lifted up in this General Assembly was the need for deeper and continued racial justice work. In particular, as it related to Black lives. The Black Lives Matter movement and our own Black Lives UU organizing collective that emerged at the previous General Assembly. And did you know that there was a special offering given at this last GA for that Black Lives UU movement? And they raised, I'm so happy to say, $90,000. Many of my colleagues and friends are amazed and astounded. But one of the greatest experiences reflecting both interfaith work and racial justice was participating in worship with Reverend Sekou and the Holy Ghost. When encountering this amazing music from this man who says he's Pentecostal at a Unitarian Universalist Association General Assembly. Wow. One could sense that this was not your average General Assembly. Clearly, we had gospel songs and songs of justice that were being brought to this assembly, and attendees began to experience a different worship style than what they might find in their own congregations. Reverend Sekou and the Holy Ghost took us to new heights and brought tears to our eyes as we affirmed that we would fight for justice, fight for Black lives, and love so great together. Then Dr. Glenn Thomas Rideout reminded us that a part of truly welcoming Blacks into our sanctuaries is through music. Dr. Rideout told us to open our hearts and enter into the spirit of the song. Don't change the song, he said. Don't change Black music. Go into it and learn from it. And that song we did, I Need You to Survive, was presented on stage for a second time at our General Assembly. And as we were singing it, tears were shed as Unitarian Universalists affirmed for one another that they needed one another, truly needed one another to survive. It reminded me of the first time I experienced this song with fellow Unitarian Universalists, religious professionals of color. And as we sang our hearts out to one another, I was moved to tears, so that every time I hear that song, I remember that there are those who need me to survive. That helps me to keep going even when I lock eyes with a white supremacist with his Confederate flag. A man who is able to fly that flag, possibly claiming a First Amendment right, and no neighbor, no government, no one tells him to take it down. And the fact that racism and oppression is front and center and institutionalized is at the thrust of our Unitarian Universalist movement now. General Assembly challenged us to go deeper, to look within at how we needed to transform ourselves and our communities, because if we do not, our country just might change for the worse. And there was a sense of this need based on the actions of immediate witness resolutions that passed. There were 3 of them that passed. Does anybody know what they are? Okay, I'll tell you. Expressing solidarity with Muslims. Advocating gun reform. And affirming support for transgender peoples. There was also a business resolution that called on Unitarian Universalists to look deeper and work with Native Americans within their community for some truth and reconciliation regarding the colonization of America. We are challenged to look at Thanksgiving, that holiday, and what that may mean to Native Americans as we approach the 400th anniversary. These resolutions reflected our need as Unitarian Universalists to do more anti-racism and anti-oppression work. And as many of you know, I don't know if you all know, I've been chosen to serve on the Committee of Anti-Racism, Anti-Oppression, Multiculturalism for the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association, which is a great honor. And that means I got to go to Chicago in a few weeks. But it's all good. And I am honored to do that exciting work. But as I've embarked on this journey, in this new role, I felt the pains of those who did not feel heard at General Assembly. Those not able-bodied still felt oppressions at our General Assembly. And I witnessed friends and colleagues in scooters with signs that said, "Ouch." There were those who felt that gender issues are still at the forefront, and so it was good that support for transgender people was affirmed, but I wonder about those who don't necessarily fit into such a category and feel as if maybe their needs weren't met. I also witnessed much hurt and anger regarding a very difficult conversation we were having about divestment from certain companies that invest in Israel. And it was hard to see the pain that people were feeling on both sides. And it didn't pass. And the reasoning was because the UUA had already divested from those companies, actually, based on a new human rights screening that they're doing with companies. But I don't think we've ever gotten to the point where we even discussed anything like this before a General Assembly. It's amazing. And it was beautiful to see and to witness what happens when everybody gets to speak and is heard, even when it's painful. And I provided pastoral care for those who were hurting, and I was happy to do that. But this reminded me of our former UUA president, the Reverend Dr. Bill Sinkford, my beloved colleague, who told us at the service of the living tradition that we were given a second chance now. He reminded us that our association lost good people because we did not wholly support Black lives back in the 1960s. People left, and our faith looked away, he said. He wondered what our faith would look like today had we remained awake, stayed awakened to the dream that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King told us about. A dream based on the beloved community. A dream that would bring heaven on earth. And Sinkford asked, how did we get from I have a dream to the new Jim Crow? And then he said, we're Unitarian Universalists were so ready to take their place in the revolution. Did we all fall asleep, he said? He said, certainly we've done a lot for justice. We were working hard for marriage equality, disability rights, women's rights. But did we take our eyes off the prize, he said. And quoting Ta-Nehisi Coates, Sinkford said, in America, it is tradition to destroy the Black body. And then he added, the gay body and the immigrant body. We did not end racism just as we have not ended homophobia, he said. Racial justice and the Black Lives Matter movement is offering us the opportunity to claim a more fuller dream. Now, I probably could have gone home after that, because that was amazing. But if that was not enough, then we heard from the Reverend Dr. William Barber preach a sermon that brought down the house at the Rally for Racial Justice. His spirit-filled sermon reminded us that when Dr. King called on churches to join him in the movement, Unitarian Universalists answered that call. And we know we lost some, right? James Reeb, Biola Liuzza, right? And he said they answered the call even when some Black churches looked away. And then he got serious and he said that the problem with this country, and you may have heard this, but we heard it first at General Assembly, is that we have a heart problem. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Because I've heard it again after General Assembly. And he said, because we have a heart problem, we need to have a movement with heart. We need a heart fixin', he said. And then he called on us to be defibrillators. He said, we are the moral, social, and political defibrillators of our time. It's time to shock this nation. And we all applauded this idea of shocking and fixing the nation's heart problem. And I felt as if we, Unitarian Universalists, could do anything. And I truly saw how we were really better together, and especially when joined with other faith communities, because Reverend Dr. William Barber is not a part of our faith community. Reverend Sekou isn't a part of our faith community, right? And yet, we were better together. And then I thought, that's what makes the work that we do in this community so important. For a group like Faith in Action, going to be Faith in the Valley, getting together, right? Members from different faiths getting together and doing the work of justice. That's what makes it so important, because we are better together. And then at the same rally, my beloved colleague, the Reverend Cheryl Walker, who's the president-elect of the UU Ministers Association,